Good morning, boys and girls. This is Kosala, also known as Marventus, coming to you from yet another cold, wintry, snowy morning in the United Kingdom. Right, now, it's been a while since I cast one of my failing games, and I've been doing a lot of experimenting the last couple of weeks, I would say. No, last week or so. On bizarre builds that include in-base hatcheries and fast expands and early roaches and what have you. And some of these builds are really quite complex, and if you get just one tiny thing wrong, it's the difference between you majorly winning and you majorly losing. So here's a game where I catastrophically lost because I quite simply forgot to build an army, even after getting the advantage I want. So here we go. Top left-hand corner we have myself as the red Zerg Marventus, and in the bottom right-hand corner we have the teal Protoss, Mr. Rico. Mr. Rico from, shall I guess, say, South America? Right, son of a drug baron, that sort of thing. Mr. Rico, the teal Protoss. Right, so let's see how we do here. Let's get a production tab up. Now, I get up to 10 drones, pop out an overlord, and then drone up to 12. Now you'll notice that I've stopped doing my my drone running into enemy base thing in the beginning, because it turns out there isn't a whole lot that could be going on here that matters at all if you are going for an early roach rush, which is exactly what I'm doing. So no matter what units are happening here or what he's doing, that is not going to make any difference to this early roach rush concept. So there's nothing he could possibly be coming at you with, because at the 4.5 minute marker we're going to rush him with a bunch of roaches. This is the plan. Let's see how it goes. At 12 supply we've got a spawning pool coming right up. Still droning away in the meantime. And I've got almost 2 rows worth of drones now, and I generally will drone away up until the 18 mark before I stop and start focusing on units. So now we're saving up to 300 minerals. Now what does one do at 300 minerals? Let me see what I did in this particular case. I did, well, wait, what is he doing? Oh, that drone is actually going off to get my hatchery. Yes, at 300 minerals and 14 supply, I got me my first expansion. Now, in this particular map, I went and got it there because it's a completely protected expansion, easy to expand to, not a huge problem. And I otherwise would have gotten that hatchery in here, in base, for the extra lava. Now, what is he doing at this point? He is popping out a forge, he's got a cybernetics core on the way, a gateway up, and he's got both of his gases about to be mining in a second. Drone count looking solid. Let's take a look at the income for the time being. Reasonably, the Protoss is slightly ahead, as indeed one would expect that to be, since my second base isn't up yet. Back to production. What's going on here? We have a couple of Zerglings popped out to man the Zelnaga tower so I can see what's going on. And in the meantime, Roach Warren now on the way. So second hatchery is now about to be up, Roach Warren on the way. When that gets halfway through and I get to 200 minerals, I should be popping out a queen. There it is. Right, now so far so good on my early roach harassment build. Now let's take a look at the units. At this point, neither of us has anything worth talking about. So I've got 4 Zerglings out, which I can do absolutely nothing with. And he's got a bunch of probes out, and he's got absolutely no army units whatsoever. So far, everything is pretty much so good, really. Putting up a pylon there. Let's see what's coming up here. We've got an additional 2 gateways, 3 gateways. So he's setting up his 4 gateway now, and probably going to research warp gate technology and have some fun with it. As indeed he should. Queen's popped out, lava's been injected, second hatchery's up, and I'm not actually going to mine with this hatchery for the time being. I'm just going to use it for lava. So as soon as this first queen is out, I should be getting a second queen out as well. There it is, training away to go and inject that one. And pretty soon we should have our first roaches in play. Now we're at the 5.5 minute mark and the first roaches come out. Now this is slightly slower than it could have been, and the reason is because I got this hatchery first. Now here I really am a little bit torn. I've done this early fast expand build several times, and more often than not I actually lose with this because it becomes very difficult to defend. Right, however, it is nice to have those few extra larvae that at the 6.5 minute mark you're going to have about 5 or 6 roaches that can head out. But then again, if you were doing a full 7 roach rush, you'd have 6-7 roaches at the 5.5 minute marker on 1 hatchery. So it's a tricky business. I mean, this starter is much better for expanding. And if your opponent fast expands, as indeed our guy does, this is a nice opener to build from that I managed to screw up in the mid game. But in the early game, if I had just gone with 1 hatchery and 7 roaches at 5.5 minutes, I would probably have taken this down. So it's a bit of a give and take. I really don't know which way to go yet and which one is most stable. Well, it is, but I will continue experimenting and find out as time goes by. And in the meantime, first expansion going up for our Protoss opponent, and my roaches are on the way. So I've got 7 roaches. No, I don't. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, 8. Oh yeah, 7 roaches and 2 zerglings. Here we go. Let's see how this goes. Zerglings die more or less instantly. Now once again I should have targeted down the sentries. I didn't do that, that was a mistake. I instead focused on the stalkers. I should have taken the sentries down first. And therefore lost 2 roaches unnecessarily, so simply bad micro there. In the meantime, I've got an additional 6 roaches on the way, and he's got 2 sentries and 2 stalkers on the way. So again, here at this point, very much in the unit count lead. Just spied this this probe heading from the bottom direction, realized that there is a fast expansion for the first time, and I start heading downwards to start nuking this, which I did a tad too early because I should have waited for these additional roaches to catch up wherever they are. They're on the way. So I've got 4 roaches popping down here to take down this expansion relatively unnecessarily, because if I had I could have just easily let that build. And in the meantime, he's got all of this coming at me. So I use this situation to pull these guys away from the main base, right, and have them occupied with my roaches as I micro them around, waiting for my 6 over here, or my 4 over here to come and do some damage in this area. But at this point he's already got his warp gate technology up and running, as we saw, so he can warp in units fairly quickly. And his economy is doing relatively sound. So he's done an excellent job, really, of countering my attack. Now what I did wrong here is that with my initial attack, I didn't actually do any permanent damage. I didn't take down an expansion, I didn't affect his mineral line, I basically took down a few units which he readily replaced, and had I taken down these couple of pylons, that would have seriously stopped his production abilities if I had taken down these 2 pylons, which I didn't do. So all in all, I did the rush poorly by focusing on the wrong units at the wrong time. So basically the only thing I managed to do was lose a bunch of units. So I've lost considerably more in unit count and minerals than he has lost, and in the meantime I have actually accomplished nothing. So this is the opposite of a well-designed roach rush. And I've got yet another 6 roaches heading his way, but now he's already manned up quite a bit and he's got a good defense in play. So while all this is going on, my macro is also suffering. I'm not doing a whole lot of good macroing here, I'm just pumping out roaches, and I'm doing that quite badly. So here we go, let's see how much we manage to do with this. Again, 3 sentries sitting around there blasting away, which I could have focus fired down and did not, until it was too late. So at this point I've actually gained no ground whatsoever, and he's still busily mining away, gaining a good mineral lead and a good resource lead. So at this point I decide to stop attacking mindlessly, head back and start to macro up. Now what I didn't do here well was I didn't actually macro up well. Right, so while I was doing getting ready to take up to Lair and move into the next tech tier, I should have pumped out regular armies, and I did not. So at this point I've got these 3 roaches, I've got a handful of zerglings somewhere, and a more what is this? This should be drones. And it's time to now start getting my mineral count up and running and trying to take up to a proper army. But now he is significantly in the lead, because his second expansion is up, he's starting to mine from it, gas is on the way. His first expansion is nicely, or main base is nicely saturated, he's got his 4 gateways, he's got the forge, and he's held off my attack, and he's got a much bigger army than I do. So this really is not a good end result, right, for an early rush. And this is the bit that I've consistently been doing wrong, and here I am going forward again to take a little poke at what... Oh, I think I'm just parking them at the front of the base here, actually. Right, so useless early rush. Simply did absolutely no good other than destroying a large amount of my heavy mineral roaches, right, and wound up decimating my army. But in the meantime, other than that, I did very little else. So I got a gas up here now as well. I'm going to start mining that very shortly. Right, and I'm trying to mineral up and resource up as much as possible to get my army going. But in the meantime, you'll notice I actually haven't got an army going. I've forgotten to build an army. But even though my supply count is fine and my mineral and gas count is fine, I'm not pumping out units. Right, I've got a spire on the way up, which is a good thing. But again, I'm not pumping out units. I know that he's got stalkers and sentries. It is to be expected that I'll be rushed with mass stalkers, so I really should have, at this point, started amassing a ground army to manage that, or amassing an aerial army to manage that. But Mutalisks frankly do horribly against stalkers. So you want to have a huge amount of speedlings or a huge amount of roaches to counter that kind of rush. Or tech up very quickly to Ultralisks, which tend to work really fantastically against Protoss. But I didn't have time to do that because he actually got such a big lead by my initially messed up rush that he's now vastly ahead in armies and in income and resources. If you take a look at the income tab, he is now a good 250 minerals a second ahead of mine. Right, and that is not a good thing. So here we are back at my base. We're still not saturated on the secondary. We are almost saturated on the primary. Still not great though, really. And this has been now a good 4 or 5 minutes since the last failed rush, and I still haven't got my macro up and running well, which is really quite poor. Because I should have stopped. I should have just focused completely on producing drones and left the Spire and whatnot till later, since Mutalisks don't really do a whole lot against stalkers anyway. So bad choices all around, really. The initial failed rush kind of threw me. And this is why doing all-in stuff is really quite bad, because in the event it fails, you are really gigantically screwed. This particular Protoss player did a really good job getting all the right upgrades and the right units to counter what I was going to be throwing at him. So my first batch of Mutalisks are out, and I pop down to do some harassment. Now interestingly, what he does the moment he sees this happening is that he does what any good player should do. He notices that he needs only quite a few units to deal with my Mutalisk harassment and sends the vast majority of his units straight into my base. So I'm doing a two-pronged attack, frontal and back here. The front just as a diversion. I knew those guys were gonna die. But these guys did not get diverted into messing around with this attack at all. There weren't that many probes here anyway. He had a couple of High Templars there to deal with the Mutalisks. And a couple of sentries. Those went down actually quite quickly. Right, and in the meantime, his main army goes straight for my base. Now, while that's happening, I bring my Mutalisks around to harass his main mineral line, which is the right thing to do. But I didn't micro or manage these particularly well. So at the end of the day, it turned out that I fell to a bunch of well-placed psionic storms. In the meantime, his main army had entered my base, and I had 0 defense. So you notice I'm producing nothing. In the last second I'm producing a bunch of roaches here, but that's simply too little too late, because I didn't actually see this happening well enough in advance to be able to do anything about it. So my Mutalisks have now been wiped out over here with a combination of High Templars doing psionic storms and his remaining stalkers, and over here his main army is going to town on my base, and there's very little I can do about this. Even with my added reinforcements, there's simply too much going on here for me to do any kind of serious damage. You'll notice that I'm not damaging them at all, plus I'm microing these guys pretty badly because they're not focus firing. And again, the 3 sentries that happened there were not properly focus fired down. Mistakes all around, boys and girls, so there's nothing for me to do here other than GG out of here. So, moral of the story, when doing the early rushes, do be prepared for the fact that you will need to macro up if it fails. And this is just a colossal failure, really. So I will need to refine this tactic to a much better level than it is right now to get anywhere. But thank you for watching all. Have a lovely day.